Hello, my name is Victoria Weatherford, and along with my colleagues Jeremy Adams, Rachel Rose, and Benjamin Siegel, I would like to share with you our case study of an oxygen supply company during the COVID-19 pandemic. In the spring of 2019, the SARS-CoV-2 virus was beginning to infect people throughout the United States, causing the COVID-19 disease and its victims. As the world witnessed the devastating effects of the virus on individuals and their respective healthcare systems in Asia and Europe, and at the behest of federal and local governments, institutions and businesses in the U.S. began closing their doors, sending their people home, and rethinking their operation models. Institutions serving the elderly and chronically ill posed the greatest risk of spreading the virus to a vulnerable population. Despite this unfortunate predicament, their services were essential and, in some cases, needed more than ever. In examining this team's network connection to members in the healthcare industry, a tie was discovered to a national oxygen supply company via a senior-level human resources employee. With offices in 48 states and over 980 facilities, including warehouses, patient centers, call centers, billing, and corporate offices, changing standard operating procedures was not only a challenge, but it was also critical to the survival of the company and to the well-being of the patients who relied on their services. This case study examines the challenges faced by the company, its employees, and its patients during the pandemic and seeks to understand the effects of the policy changes made in response to the crisis. It was through the human resources connection that the team was able to obtain permission from the corporate office to conduct interviews with a few select employees. A stipulation made by the company was that their company and employees not be identified by name. For this reason, the company shall be referred to by the fictitious name Oxygen Supply Plus. To gain a more robust understanding of the changes in protocol, the team requested interviews with employees from various departments. Oxygen Supply Plus granted access to the aforementioned human resources employee, a delivery driver, and a sales representative. To maintain their anonymity, interviews were conducted via Zoom without video and without names attached. Interviewees were asked to make comparisons between the challenges they faced before and the challenges they faced during the pandemic. This report summarizes the findings of said interviews and discusses the feasibility of implementing similar protocols across the healthcare supply industry and the value in continuing the protocols after the threat of the pandemic has subsided. Our interview questions varied only slightly from one employee to the next, focusing on comparisons in policy from pandemic times to pre-pandemic times, the results of the policy changes, and the role employees played in their formation, as well as what policies will make a positive permanent impact.
Perhaps some of the easiest changes that could be made to protect the health of the employees were implemented in the offices. Life in the offices changed drastically with new COVID-19 policies in place. Anyone who could work from home was asked to do so, and for those who had to come in were required to sit 10 feet apart and separated from other employees by clear plastic panels. Cleaning personnel was increased as the once-a-day cleaning increased to 3 times daily. Seating was removed from the gathering areas, including the cafeterias. Temperature sensing cameras were put in place to monitor employees' temperatures. And for those who had to work from home, the company provided laptops that had productivity software already installed to monitor employees and to keep them on task. Delivery drivers for Oxygen Supply Plus don't just deliver supplies and equipment. Before the pandemic, they installed the equipment in patients' homes and provided a human connection that patients grew accustomed to. It was not unusual for delivery drivers to be asked to help with moving furniture or other tasks patients, often living alone, couldn't handle on their own. Protecting the customer and the employee was a top priority when Oxygen Supply Plus changed their delivery protocol. Drivers are no longer permitted inside patient homes unless absolutely necessary. Drivers drop the equipment off outside the door and call the patient from their vehicle to walk them through installation and setup. If a driver must enter the patient's home, the driver must remain 10 feet away from the patient. In the event that the driver does have to go inside, the driver is required to report it to the company. Once reported to the company, managers would decide whether to send the driver on the rest of his or her deliveries for the day or ask them to go home for the day. According to the delivery driver that we interviewed, he was always asked to go home and get a COVID-19 test before returning to work. Due to more people being at home to receive the deliveries, the route times have decreased and our driver found it more efficient than the pre-pandemic routes. The trade-off, however, is the loss of personal service to many lonely patients. Our driver that we interviewed felt that the personal touch is what set Oxygen Supply Plus above its competitors.
Most new patients are referred to Oxygen Supply Plus by their doctor's offices. Sales representatives spent their days visiting doctors face-to-face as phone calls were not allowed pre-pandemic. The representatives would often stop by to see if there were any patients needing their services or to provide lunch to the office and showcase products and services. Sometimes they would just stop by to complete or correct paperwork needed for a patient's order. Sales for the company relied heavily on strong relationships with doctors and their staff. According to the sales representative we interviewed, doctors' offices stopped allowing salespeople to come in at all post-pandemic, forcing the representatives to attempt to reach them by phone. Competing with patients, other doctors, and pharmacies for the doctor's phone time meant that it was easier to be ignored. Our sales representative said that it's nearly impossible to build a business relationship with a new doctor over the phone. Now that orders can be placed and updated online, the sales representatives have even fewer opportunities to get face time with their best referral sources. This has not stopped sales representatives from doing their job. Now more than ever, they are focused on current customers rather than finding new ones. Although this does not create new business opportunities and is ultimately bad, sales representatives have been able to continue working and building connections through doctors instead of finding new customers on their own.
A common theme observed throughout the interviews was that Oxygen Supply Plus was extremely concerned with the safety of their employees. Many changes were made with employee feedback and updates were sent out regularly to staff. During the interview with the delivery driver, he mentioned a problem that many of the other drivers were facing at the beginning of the pandemic. Masks that the company provides to the drivers either did not fit, would break, or felt very thin, uncomfortable, and ineffective. Upon being made aware of the driver's concerns, Oxygen Supply Plus ordered new masks for every driver within the company, and the masks were delivered to the drivers within 2 days. According to Human Resources, employee morale at the start of the pandemic was good. All employees were going to keep their jobs, and many would just work from home. There was no increase in undesired behavior by employees for the first 2 months of the pandemic. As time went on, however, employee behavior started to take a turn for the worst. According to the Human Resources representative interviewed, as time went on, staff began to act out, quit, or do not so intelligent things. Due to the higher level of stress their staff has experienced due to the pandemic, management has been more understanding and has lightened up on many write-ups or warnings for undesired behavior. This leniency has strengthened employee-company relationships according to the delivery driver and sales representative. Oxygen Supply Plus is still collecting daily surveys from their frontline employees, asking how the employees feel in terms of their health and in terms of their job conditions. The survey also has a place for employees to suggest changes or write any kind of concerns that they might have had. These surveys are collected by management and reviewed by area managers on a day-to-day basis. Not all the employees are surveyed, however, only the frontline employees who are unable to work from home. The Human Resources representative stated that some changes will remain in place, namely the ability for many employees to work from home. This came as a surprise to Human Representative due to the fact that Oxygen Supply Plus has historically very anti-work from home mindset. There would be considerable value in interviewing employees from other departments and regions to broaden the view of how a company of such scale handled the pandemic. It would also be interesting to see what percentage of employees work from home in the long run and what economic impacts are on the company of reducing in-person staffing as well as the effect on employee morale. Customer relations, according to the sales representative, are essentially dead. According to him, it will never be the same as it was before. In terms of how many doctors he has lost to other companies and the kinds of relationships he has with doctors. Following up with the sales representative in a year to see what changes he has made in his approach to recruiting new customers would be of interest. Should it remain difficult, the team would be curious to know if commission structures are altered to retain sales reps. Checking in 1 or 2 years to see how employee morale increases or decreases with time and changes that the company makes would be a good indication of the sustainability of said changes.